Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Norwich Talk for another transfer rumour video. Yes, this one has got me particularly excited. I've literally just read this article from Dave Freezer on the Pinkin, who within that article, he referenced an article from courtoffside.com. So they are my sources for this. As ever, the links to these articles will be left in the description box down below. But today we're going to be talking about Kristoffer Ajer, a player that really excites me. Now, maybe for the wrong reasons in that this excites me because I used him on FM, Football Manager, that is, of course, and he was absolutely brilliant. So it's very interesting to see Norwich being linked with that player. The guy on FM, by the way, if you're an FM player, you've got to sign him. He is an absolute colossus. He can play literally anywhere, which we will be talking about in this video. But now to get a little bit more serious, as ever, we'll run through what we know about him, ask a few questions at the end and what this could mean in terms of who we will and won't see here next season, because it does sort of raise a few interesting points, especially with the emergence of Andrew Omobamidele, the man who, of course, recently featured on this channel with an interview with Sam and Alf, which I think was absolutely brilliant. Everyone seems to have enjoyed it so far. Massive thank you if you've watched that. But yeah, hopefully there's some more of those interviews to come as well. But yeah, it was very exciting stuff. Really proud of Sam and Alf for producing such a good interview with a very exciting and a very talented footballer. But to get back to Kristoffer Ajer, we'll go through what we know. As ever, next to me, you'll see our little collection of notes and thoughts, so the video is a little bit easier to follow. But what do we know? We know that he is 23 years old, he is Norwegian, and he is predominantly a centre-back, but he can also play in right-back and central defensive midfield. He's currently playing for Celtic in the Scottish Premier League. He's 6'5", so he is a giant. And in terms of his playing experience, he is a Norwegian international. He's amassed 21 first-team caps for Norway, and then he's been playing since 16s level, I believe. I didn't actually count how many times, but he's been playing, or he's been representing his country throughout the most of his career. He's played 173 times for his current club, Celtic, which is quite a lot for only being 23. I think that's quite impressive. Within his stint at Celtic, he spent a little bit of time on loan at Kilmarnock. Kilmarnock, a team I know absolutely nothing about, and he's got plenty of Europa League experience with Celtic. I didn't see any Champions League. Please correct me if I am wrong, but European football experience is vital and really impressive. And again, he's only 23 years old. So he seems to have achieved a fair bit in such a short career so far. An interesting point as well is that next season his contract enters its final 12 months, which is why I think this could actually be quite a realistic signing for Norwich City if he was to have 3 or 4 years left on his contract. You look at his age and his experience so far, I think he could have cost an arm and a leg. Whereas potentially if his head was to be turned by a team like Norwich, we could get him on the cheap, potentially. All very exciting stuff. As well as that, Newcastle have also registered interest, according to Dave Freezer in his article. And I looked a little bit further into sort of general transfer rumours to do with him before as well. Last summer, AC Milan, a very big team, were interested in him. And then the season before that, so the 18-19 season, maybe, I'm not actually sure what year we're in now, but Leicester have also shown interest in him before. We know how much Leicester love producing these or buying these young players and making them superstars, don't we? So big clubs have been interested in him, so he's not like he's some sort of off the radar player, which is very exciting because we've always been saying, haven't we, want to see Norwich City sign some sort of bigger names, well-known names, which we know isn't the Webber way, but it's nice to see a player of such a high caliber who is highly regarded by other clubs, clearly. It's nice to see Norwich City show interest in that type of player. Now, if we look at his stats for this season, now this first one here is one that Dave Freezer brought to my attention in the article. He has the second best passing accuracy in his the division, the SPL. Scottish Premier League. I'm not actually sure what it's called. Maybe that's right. But second best passing accuracy, which I believe is like 88.74%, which is very good. Now, remember that because I'm going to mention that in a second when it comes to his strengths and weaknesses and his sort of playing style. As well as that, he's only got one yellow card this season in the league, which suggests he's a fairly well-disciplined player. Although, again, in the interest of balance, remember that, because when I go through his strengths and his weaknesses, according to whoscored.com, which is what I'm going to start doing in these videos, I did in the last one, which I've totally forgotten who the player was who we were talking about. But it's very interesting to see what these websites think their weaks and strengths are, weaknesses and strengths are. My words are failing me at this point. But also this season, he has played predominantly as a centre-back. He's put in a couple of shifts at right back. But you sort of look across his whole career, he can play in CDM as well, which is, and as I always say, being versatile is such an important thing. You look at Norwich City going into next season. Christoph Zimmermann, is he going to be good enough for the Premier League? No. Will Omobamidele go out on loan? Probably, maybe, I'm not sure. Is Ollie Skip going to be here next season? We don't know. So a man who can play in centre-back and CDM is going to be very, very important. And it's not just any player, it's a player with fairly decent experience. Obviously, Celtic this year haven't had a great year. I think Rangers have won the league by at least 20 points. And there's been a bit of a revolt at Celtic in terms of from the fans. Obviously, a friend of this channel, Mr. Stuart Hodge, who's just launched his own Norwich City podcast, by the way, or will be launching it soon. So make sure you go and check that out. But sort of looking at his Twitter on the regular about Celtic, I don't think Celtic fans are having too great of a time. But I won't let that taint Ajer's sort of experience as a player on the whole, because it really does excite me. It genuinely does. I'm just looking through my notes here. His strengths and weaknesses, I think we'll get into now. Strengths, tackling, aerial duels, according to whoscored.com, and I'm just opting to choose. I'm opting to trust them. If you don't want to, I think that's fair enough, but I'm opting to. Tackling, aerial duels, as I said, tackling, great. Defender who can tackles, that's usually quite good. That's sort of their job. Aerial duels, good. Again, that's sort of their job, isn't it? Make of that what you will. Weaknesses is very interesting. It says discipline, although it says this season he's only got one yellow card. So in the interest of balance, I think I'll let you make your own mind up on what you think of that. I'm going to opt to look at the yellow cards rather than sort of the more subjective opinion via whoscored.com. And I'm going to say that maybe he is a well-disciplined player. And it says tackling here is a strength. So it's a bit confusing. So I'll let you make of that what you will. I'll just give you the facts or the opinions from these websites that I think a lot of people trust. So make of that what you will. Now, what I did do as well is I looked a bit into his injury history because you look at Norwich City this season, last season especially, injury crises are something that Norwich City experience on the regular. So when Norwich make signings, I do tend to sort of delve into the injury history to see if they are carrying a constant niggle or something that could haunt Norwich a little bit later. Or a bit later, haunt the player a bit later into their Norwich City career. The words are really struggling at the moment, but he's only missed more than 2 games twice with an injury over the last 5 years, which I believe one was a fractured eye socket, which he missed 7 games for, and another one was described as a knee problem, which was 7 games. But the inference I'm making from this is that only for I think it was like 7-8 injuries over 5 years have made him only miss 2 games at a time, which suggests, fingers crossed, he's not carrying like a constant injury. He's not battling a constant injury. Obviously, he's only 23, so really he shouldn't be. But that's a positive for me. To me, it suggests that he's not an injury-prone player, which is very, very good. Very, very positive, of course. As we know, I always reference last season when it comes to an injury crisis, but you look at this season as well. It's a brilliant example of injury crisis being sort of a predominant thing at Norwich. So yes, he's not an injury-prone player, which is very, very good. Now, in terms of facts, that's probably just about everything. The questions I want to sort of ask and talk about a little bit of is what does this mean for sort of Norwich's current crop? Christoph Zimmermann, for me, I'd be surprised to see him here next season. I can't remember who I was having a discussion with. I was having a discussion with someone where you sort of look at some sort of maybe a 3rd tier, 2nd tier German team will see a former Premier League defender and think, oh yeah, I'll take him. Zimmermann for me, nowhere near good enough for the Premier League. I think that's fairly clear. It's annoying and it's a bit sad because he's been an absolute stalwart for the club, hasn't he? He's been a really good leader and obviously he is a fantastic person by the looks of it. From what you see and the sort of the work he does with the sort of the Community Sports Foundation as well. He's always eager to work with them, which when it comes to football on the pitch, you can't look too much into, can you? He is not good enough for the Premier League. Now, something that's a little bit more interesting is, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the emergence of Andrew Omobamidele. What would this mean for him? Now, Omobamidele is an interesting case study of which I want to talk with Sam and Alf about this a little bit more in a podcast at some point. Not sure when we'll do that. You'll obviously be well warned before doing that. But with Omobamidele, some people think he could be, and I think I was a little bit guilty of this at first, in terms of thinking this is the next Ben Godfrey, and next season he'll play in the Premier League and be fantastic. It's a little bit different. Ben Godfrey, before playing for Norwich City, had a year experience at Shrewsbury, not playing a centre back, but I think he had 6 or 7 months playing for Norwich in the Championship, as opposed to Omobamidele's, was it 5 games, 6 games now? And also, I think he's 3 years younger, Omobamidele, than what Ben Godfrey was. So it's an interesting thing, and I know Daniel Farke and Stuart Webber will make the right decision for him. I very much see a case where he goes out on loan next season for regular week in, week out football, because it could, I think devastating is the wrong word. It could maybe negatively impact him if he was to just sit on the bench every week. That said, he is only 18 years old. So it's not like he's not got long left of his career to sit on the bench and learn. From the others and perhaps get game time as well. Obviously, going into next season, your starting pair is going to be Hanley and Gibson, providing they both stay fit, purely for the fact that this season they've just been absolutely brilliant. So I very much see a case of if someone like Ajer was to be signed, you would see Omobamidele go out on loan. But as I said, I think we'll go into a bit more depth about that a little bit more at some point. I really don't know, whenever we do a podcast. Now, another interesting question is, what would Ajer's role at Norwich be? I believe it would be a centre back. He's right-footed, so I think potentially he could be better than Grant Hanley. I would like to see Norwich City sign a centre back theoretically or statistically better than Grant Hanley, because I love Grant Hanley. He has been, without a doubt, one of the best players this season, but there has been sort of this trend, and it hasn't been the case this season, really, has it? But he does tend to get injured sometimes, and I don't want to rely on just him in the Premier League. It's got nothing to do with his quality, because I do believe he'd be good enough. He's also getting on a little bit, so I think someone like Ajer bringing him in would be really, really good and a really positive thing. Because, as I said, I don't know how much I trust Hanley to stay fit. Quality-wise, he's been absolutely superb. I was on Connor's Terrace Talk recently. I think it was a promotion special with a fella called Peter from America, and he said he voted for him as his player of the season, which I think was absolutely justified. Grant Hanley has been fantastic. You look at last night's game against Watford, he was absolutely bloody brilliant. Now, I know we lost the game, but he was a colossus. And you look at Bournemouth as well, where he got injured. He picked up a bit of a knock, but he said to Daniel Farke, he said, no, I want to stay on, I want to play. That is the sign of a man who wants to be here and is just absolutely brilliant. So I'm full of praise for Grant Hanley, but I want competition. Competition is healthy. You look at last season, for as much as we don't really like doing that, you look at the signing of Ralph Fairman. I think on paper he probably had a bit more experience, was a bit better than, or a bit more impressive than Tim Krul. But he brought the best of Tim Krul out. So potentially you could see that happen again at Norwich. But competition is so, so important. I would like to see Norwich sign out. I'm not going to lie to you. And also, you look at his across his career, he's played in CDM as well. So a versatile player would be very nice. And we know how much Daniel Farke likes his versatile players. Now, in terms of sort of the CDM role, I now do think Norwich City will get Ollie Skip on loan next season. I was convinced we would until the sort of European Super League was called off. Thank God for that, by the way. We'll be discussing that on the podcast as well, because how can you not? It's everything that is being spoken about on Twitter right now. We won't say too much about it, but it just does make me more grateful for the owners we have at Norwich City, Delia, Michael, people who actually care about the club. I can feel myself getting carried away, so I'm going to stop myself right there. It's kind of ironic that I have a Barcelona top on, actually, so that perhaps wasn't the most wise choice I've ever made in my life. But we'll definitely be talking about that on the podcast. But I do think we will see Ollie Skip on loan again at Norwich next season, because in terms of replacing Jose Mourinho, I think Tottenham will bring in a big name. I think, what's his name? Nagelsmann, the 33-year-old from Leipzig, I believe that's his name. If they were to sign him, I think he'd look to bring in bigger names for Tottenham, rather than maybe taking a bit of a risk on a player like Ollie Skip. Jose Mourinho was dead set on Skip being a future Tottenham captain, which I believe he will be. But I think sort of the place that Tottenham are in, they need success, and they need success now. Otherwise, their fans are going to continue to get more and more annoyed. So I think a big hitter, I can't think of an example who they might sign. I don't know what sort of their financial resources are like, other than they must be pretty poor because of COVID and their desperation to play in the European Super League. But yeah, I think we'll see Ollie Skip on loan next season. Although that said, Nagelsmann likes his young players. So if he was to become Tottenham's new manager, then perhaps he would take a punt on him. Yeah, It's a very weird one, isn't it? It's very interesting. I do like in these videos going back and forth with myself. But yeah, that is probably everything for this video. I would very much like to see Kristoffer Ajer sign for Norwich City. That would very much please me. I think I'll probably get Hodge on at some point as well, just to talk us through him, because he is obviously a Celtic fan and he knows a lot about the club. So his views would be would be a view that I would listen to and repeat back to you, so we can all get to know Kristoffer Ajer a little bit better. I'm also so thankful for the fact that the name was actually fairly easy to pronounce. That's very rare these days when it comes to potential Norwich City signings, of course. But yes, that is everything for this video. Let me know your thoughts on anything I've said in the comments down below, whether you agree, whether you disagree. Let your thoughts be heard. I would absolutely love to engage in a little discussion. If you could leave a thumbs up if you've enjoyed the video. If you haven't, fair enough, hit the dislike button twice. That would be very much appreciated. If you enjoy these videos as well, why not consider subscribing? We're at 1.15k now, which is very pleasing, very much enjoying. So I'm very thankful for the support that has been shown to the channel this season, despite the fact I did take another sort of 2-month sabbatical. I realised me, Sam and Alf are very grateful for everyone who comments and enjoys these videos. We'll be doing the review as well. I can finally announce that, and we can have a happy review compared to last season's. At some point, the little 4-part mini series. To those who are new, go back and check out the old ones for sort of the format. We'll be getting some guests on again, some familiar faces, some new faces to the channel as well. All very exciting stuff. I am incredibly excited for that. But yes, that is everything for this video. So hopefully we'll see you again very, very soon.